She cooked to pay the bills. He signed checks that could change cities. An unlikely meeting, an offer you can't refuse, and a war of principles. When the truth boils in the pot, what weighs more, love or dignity? Get ready for a flavor that becomes destiny. Before this beautiful story begins, subscribe to our channel to receive heartwarming stories every day. The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 in the morning, but Alma Rojas had already been awake for 10 minutes, her eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling of her small apartment on the south side of San Antonio. The darkness outside pressed against the window like a held breath. She could feel the weight of the day before it even began. The same weight she'd carried since her mother died 3 years ago, leaving her with a grease-stained notebook and a promise she couldn't break. The cold tile floor shocked her bare feet as she stood. She moved through the apartment without turning on lights, her body knowing the path by memory. In the kitchen, she filled the coffee maker with water that tasted faintly metallic from old pipes. While it brewed, she opened the notebook, its pages soft as fabric from constant handling, and traced her mother's handwriting. Mole. 28 ingredients. Patience is the 29th. Her mother, Luz, had written that the week before she died. Alma closed the notebook and pressed it against her chest. The coffee finished brewing, filling the small space with a bitter warmth that made her feel less alone. By 5:15, she was driving her 15-year-old Honda Civic through empty streets, watching the city wake up around her. The Pearl District's renovated buildings gave way to warehouses, then to the humble storefronts of her neighborhood. The taqueria sat between a laundromat and a check-cashing place, its hand-painted sign faded but legible. Alma's Place. She'd named it after herself because her mother had insisted 2 days before her death that Alma deserved to see her own name in lights, even if those lights were just sun-bleached paint. Inside she flipped switches and the fluorescent tubes flickered to life with a sound like paper tearing. The kitchen smelled of yesterday's cooking oil and the ghost of 1,000 meals. She tied her hair back, washed her hands in water so hot it hurt, and began the ritual that defined her days. Corn masa from the local mill. She'd built a relationship with the owner, Mr. Gonzalez, who gave her a discount because she paid cash and never complained. Tomatoes from the Pearl Farmers Market, still cool from morning dew. Chilies she'd selected herself, testing each one for firmness and the right kind of heat that didn't burn, but built slowly, honestly. She prepared the mole, toasting seeds in a cast-iron skillet her grandmother had given her mother, which her mother had given to her. The smell rose up, cinnamon, chocolate, chilies, and filled the space until it felt less like a commercial kitchen and more like a home. This was the point of every morning, when Alma felt her mother's presence most clearly, when the work of her hands connected her to something larger than survival. The first customer arrived at 6:30, Mrs. Chen from the nail salon next door, who always ordered the same thing, 2 barbacoa tacos, extra cilantro. Alma handed her the warm bundle wrapped in foil and wax paper. "Smells like heaven," Mrs. Chen said. And Alma smiled, not because she was supposed to, but because she meant it. By 7 o'clock, the line stretched to the door. Gabe Arriaga stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office in downtown San Antonio, watching the traffic flow 42 stories below. The city looked clean from this height, orderly, geometric, manageable. His reflection in the glass showed a man in his mid-30s wearing a suit that cost more than most people made in a month, but he felt none of the satisfaction that should have come with that fact. His phone vibrated. Another email from the PR team. Subject line: urgent. Response strategy for SA Observer article. He didn't need to read it to know what it said. For months the criticism had been building, not just from food bloggers and critics, but from the kind of people whose opinions mattered: hospitality industry veterans, cultural commentators, the chefs his hotels employed, who wouldn't speak openly, but whose resignation showed in their eyes. The message was always the same: Arriaga Luxury Hotels had lost its soul. He'd inherited the chain from his father, who'd built it from a single property in Houston to 18 locations across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. His father had valued efficiency, consistency, scalability. Gabe had maintained that vision, expanding to 24 locations in 3 years. Revenue was strong. Occupancy rates stayed near 90%, but something had curdled along the way. The hotel served regional cuisine that bore no resemblance to the regions it claimed to represent: mole made from powder, tortillas from a factory in Michigan, carne asada pre-portioned and shipped frozen from a warehouse in Kansas. Last week, a food journalist had written, "Eating at an Arriaga hotel restaurant is like watching someone describe a memory of food they once tasted. The experience is always pleasant, always predictable, and always hollow." Gabe had read that line 17 times. Each time it stung worse. He'd been alone when he read it. Actually alone, not just physically isolated. His marriage had ended 2 years ago. His ex-wife, Camila, had stayed on as the chain's culinary director, a decision that seemed professional at the time, but now felt like sleeping next to a grenade. His parents lived in Houston and spoke to him only about business. His friends, if he could call them that, were mostly people who wanted something from him: investment opportunities, networking connections, donations to causes he didn't care about. That night, he'd left his apartment without telling his assistant where he was going. He'd driven his BMW to the Pearl Farmers Market and walked among the vendors, wearing jeans and a baseball cap, listening. A woman selling peaches talked about how the late frost had damaged half her crop, but made the survivors sweeter. A man with calloused hands offered samples of goat cheese he'd made that morning. Everyone spoke with specificity, with pride that came from work that meant something beyond a paycheck. At a small stand near the back, a woman about his age was serving tacos from a cart. The line stretched 20 people deep despite the early hour. He joined the line and waited, watching her work. She moved with economy, no wasted motion, calling customers by name. When his turn came, she looked him in the eyes, really looked, not through him, and asked what he wanted. "Whatever you recommend," he said. She studied him for a moment. "The mole." It arrived on a paper plate, warm and fragrant. He ate standing up. The first bite stopped him mid-thought. The sauce had depth, layers that revealed themselves slowly. The chicken was tender, the tortilla still warm. It tasted like someone had cared about every single element. He approached her after he finished. "This is incredible," he said. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" She wiped her hands on her apron. "My mother." "Why are you asking?" "Just curious," he said. "Do you have a restaurant?" She nodded toward a business card taped to her cart. "Small place on the south side. We're open 6 to 6, Tuesday through Saturday." "And what do you think about hotel restaurants?" he asked. "Like the Arriaga chain?" Her expression changed, became careful. "You work for them?" "I'm asking your opinion." She looked at him for a long moment. "They serve food that looks right but feels wrong. It's like they learned the recipe but forgot why anyone cared about it in the first place." The words landed hard, but he didn't flinch. "Anything else?" "They waste too much. They standardize things that shouldn't be standardized. They hire people who don't know the difference between cooking and assembly." She paused. "But they pay their workers on time, and the benefits are decent. So there's that." He smiled despite himself. "That's the most honest review I've heard in years." "I don't have time for dishonest ones," she said, turning back to her next customer. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about her. 3 days later, Alma opened the taqueria to find a man in an expensive suit waiting outside. He looked out of place, not just because of the suit, but because of the way he stood, like someone used to doors being opened for him. "We're not open for another 20 minutes, she said, keys in hand. "I know," he said. "I'm Gabe Arriaga. I'd like to talk to you about a job." She froze. She'd looked him up after their conversation at the market. CEO of the hotel chain, Forbes profile. Estimated net worth, $38 million. And now he was standing outside her taqueria at 5:40 in the morning. I'm not interested, she said, unlocking the door. He followed her inside. You haven't heard the offer yet. She turned on the lights and began her morning routine, ignoring him. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, watching. She moved around him like he was furniture. I want to hire you as a consultant, he finally said, to redesign the menus at 3 pilot properties. You'd have full control over sourcing, preparation methods, training, a team to execute your vision, budget to work with local suppliers. He paused. And you'd keep this place open. I'm not asking you to give up anything. She stopped chopping onions and looked at him. Why me? Because you told me the truth, he said. And because your mole is the best thing I've eaten in 10 years. What's the catch? No catch. I'm trying to save the brand before it's too late. And I think you know how to do it. She wiped her hands on her apron. How much? He named a salary that was more than she made in a year. I need to think about it, she said. Take your time. He handed her a business card. But not too much time. We're bleeding customers, and I don't know how much longer we have. After he left, Alma stood in the empty kitchen, holding the card. The number on it was a direct line, his personal cell. She thought about Donna Julia, her grandmother, who needed medication that cost $300 a month. She thought about the 2 women who helped her in the kitchen, who had families to feed. She thought about the dreams she'd had since high school. Culinary school, a degree, legitimacy. The door opened. Mrs. Chen came in, early as always. You look stressed, Mrs. Chen said. Someone offered me a job, Alma said. Good job? I don't know yet. Mrs. Chen sat down at the counter. My grandmother used to say, when the universe offers you a door, at least look through it before you decide. Alma nodded. That afternoon, she called the number. The first meeting took place in a conference room that smelled like furniture polish and ambition. Gabe sat at the head of a table long enough to seat 20 people. Alma sat to his right, wearing the one professional dress she owned, feeling like a child playing dress-up. Across from her sat Camila Navarro, Gabe's ex-wife and the chain's culinary director, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes sharp as broken glass. So you're the miracle worker, Camila said, her voice pleasant in a way that set Alma's nerves on edge. I'm a cook, Alma said. Right. Camila opened a leather portfolio. Gabe tells me you want to completely overhaul our supply chain. That's going to be complicated. It should be, Alma said. Good food is complicated. Camilla's smile didn't reach her eyes. We serve 40,000 meals a week across 24 properties. Complicated doesn't scale. Maybe that's the problem, Alma said. The room went quiet. Gabe leaned back in his chair, watching them both. Let's start smaller, he said. Alma, walk us through your vision for the pilot program. Alma opened her notebook, the same one her mother had used, and began. She talked about seasonal menus that changed based on what local farmers had available. She talked about training kitchen staff to actually cook, not just reheat. She talked about building relationships with suppliers, paying them fairly, making the food someone would want to eat, even if they weren't hungry. Camila took notes, her pen moving across the page with aggressive efficiency. When Alma finished, Camila closed her portfolio. It's a nice idea, she said, but our current suppliers offer volume discounts that keep our costs competitive. Switching to small batch producers will increase food costs by at least 30%. Can you explain to the board why we should take that hit? Alma met her eyes. Because right now you're losing customers who care about what they eat. And those are the customers who will spend money on rooms, on events, on everything else. You save 30% on food costs and lose 50% on everything else. That's not competitive. That's stupid. Gabe coughed to cover a laugh. Camilla's expression hardened. We'll need to see proposals, Camila said. Cost breakdowns, menu prototypes, health department approvals, all of that before we move forward. Fine, Alma said. And you'll need an office, Camila added. I'll have someone find you space. The office turned out to be a converted storage room in the basement of the corporate headquarters, with no windows and fluorescent lighting that hummed like wasps. Alma spent the next 3 weeks there, building menus, calling suppliers, negotiating prices. She worked 12-hour days at the taqueria, then came to the office and worked until midnight. Her body ached, her eyes burned, but she kept going because she'd made a promise, not to Gabe, but to herself. One night, she looked up from her computer to find him standing in the doorway. "You're still here," he said. "So are you." He came in and sat in the plastic chair across from her desk. "Camilla thinks you're going to fail." "I know," Alma said. "She's probably going to try to make sure you do." "I know that too." He leaned forward. "I meant what I said. You have full control. If she interferes, you tell me." Alma closed her laptop. "Why are you doing this? Really?" He was quiet for a long time. "Because I hate what we've become," he said finally, "and because I don't know how to fix it by myself." It was the first honest thing he'd said to her. She nodded. "Then we'll figure it out together." The pilot program launched at 3 properties, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. Alma traveled between them, training kitchen staff, meeting with farmers, adjusting recipes. The work was exhausting, but exhilarating. For the first time since her mother died, she felt like she was building something that mattered. The Austin property manager, a woman named Teresa, embraced the changes immediately. She helped Alma connect with local ranchers and drove her to meet a woman who grew heirloom tomatoes in her backyard. The Houston manager was skeptical but willing. The San Antonio manager, a man named Rick, who'd worked for the chain for 15 years, fought her at every step. "This isn't how we do things," he said when she tried to change the tortilla supplier. "That's the point," Alma said. "The guests like what we serve now." "The guests settle for what you serve now. There's a difference." He crossed his arms. "Camilla says we need to maintain brand consistency." Alma felt the anger rise in her chest, hot and tight. "Camilla isn't in charge of this project. I am." "We'll see how long that lasts," Rick muttered. That night, Alma called Gabe. "Rick is undermining me." "I'll talk to him," Gabe said. "Don't just talk. Replace him." There was a pause. "That's a big move." "You said I have full control. Was that true or not?" "It was true." "Then replace him." Rick was gone within a week. The new manager was a young woman who'd worked her way up from housekeeping and who cried when Alma taught her how to make fresh salsa. The reviews started coming in after 2 months. A food blogger in Austin wrote, "The restaurant at the Arriaga Hotel actually serves food worth leaving your room for. The mole has depth. The tortillas taste like corn. It's a miracle." Reservations increased. Guest satisfaction scores rose. But so did Alma's problems. Someone filed an anonymous health complaint against the taqueria, claiming improper food storage. The health department showed up unannounced and shut her down for 72 hours while they investigated. Alma stood outside her own restaurant, watching the inspector take photos, knowing this wasn't random. The timing was too perfect. The accusation too specific. She called Gabe. "Someone's trying to destroy me." "I'll look into it," he said. "Don't look. Act." He met her at the taqueria that evening. Together they went through every document, every receipt, every temperature log. The complaint cited a photo showing improper storage of raw meat. But Alma had never stored meat that way. The photo had to be fake. "Who would do this?" she asked. Gabe didn't answer, but his jaw tightened. "Camilla," Alma said. "I don't know that for sure." "But you suspect it." He looked at her. "Yes." Alma felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd known Camilla disliked her, but this was different. This was sabotage. This was war. "What do we do?" she asked. Gabe was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that changed everything. "We announce an engagement." Alma stared at him. "What?" "We announce that we're engaged," Gabe said. "It puts a spotlight on both of us, makes it too risky for anyone to keep attacking you. And it gives us legal grounds to fight back, demonstrating that attacks on you damage my reputation and the chain's image." "That's insane." Alma said. Maybe, but it'll work. She paced the length of the empty taqueria. The tables stood bare. The kitchen sat dark. Her life's work had been shut down with a single phone call, and now this stranger, this millionaire in his expensive suit, was asking her to fake a relationship to save it. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. "Proof that I'm serious about change," he said, "and protection for you, which protects the project." "And what do I get?" "Your restaurant back, your reputation intact, and formal documented authority over the supply chain decisions." She stopped pacing. "In writing?" "In writing." "And what happens when we end the engagement?" "We'll figure that out later," he said. "Right now, we need to stop the bleeding." Alma thought about Donna Julia, who could barely afford her medication. She thought about the women who worked in her kitchen, who had families depending on them. She thought about her mother's notebook and the promise she'd made. "Okay," she said, "but I want it in the contract. Everything you just said, no loopholes, no fine print. Done." They shook hands. His palm was warm and dry, professional. The announcement went out the next morning. Tech entrepreneur turned hotel executive Gabe Arriaga engaged to local chef and culinary consultant Alma Rojas. The press loved it. Cinderella story. One headline read, "Southside cook marries into hotel fortune." The comments section filled with congratulations and skepticism in equal measure. The health investigation wrapped up 3 days later. The complaint was dismissed, insufficient evidence. But the damage had been done. Alma lost a week of revenue and 3 regular customers who assumed the complaint meant she'd been careless. She and Gabe met to plan their public appearances. They sat across from each other in his office, the city spread out behind him like a postcard. "We need to look natural together," he said. "Comfortable." "I barely know you," Alma said. "Then let's fix that." He closed his laptop. "Tell me about your mother." The question caught her off guard. "Why?" "Because if we're going to convince people this is real, I need to know you. Really know you." So she told him. About Luz, who'd cleaned houses during the day and cooked at night. About the notebook full of recipes and wisdom. About the promise Alma had made at her mother's deathbed. Never stop fighting for what matters. Gabe listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "My father died 2 years ago," he said finally. "Heart attack. He was at his desk when it happened. He'd been working on a spreadsheet about quarterly projections." He looked out the window. "I didn't cry at his funeral. I just felt numb, like I'd lost someone I'd never really known." Alma saw the grief in his face, old and settled like scar tissue. "That's why you're doing this," she said. "The hotels, the changes. You're trying to build something he'd be proud of." "Maybe," Gabe said. "Or maybe I'm trying to build something I can be proud of." For the first time since they'd met, Alma saw him as a person rather than an obstacle or an opportunity. "We can do that," she said, "together." The weeks that followed felt like living in 2 worlds simultaneously. In one world, Alma and Gabe attended charity galas and gave interviews, playing the role of the couple in love. In the other world, they worked 18-hour days trying to save the pilot program from collapsing under the weight of Camilla's sabotage. The sabotage was subtle but relentless. Shipments from small farmers arrived late, not late enough to file complaints, but late enough to disrupt meal preparation. Kitchen staff at the pilot properties kept quitting, always citing vague, better opportunities that materialized the day after they resigned. Supply contracts got tied up in legal review for weeks. Every obstacle could be explained away as bad luck or bureaucratic inefficiency, but the pattern was clear. Alma and Gabe sat in his apartment one evening, surrounded by spreadsheets and supplier contracts. It was past midnight. Alma's eyes burned with exhaustion. "She's bleeding us slowly," Alma said. "Death by 1,000 cuts." Gabe rubbed his face. "I can fire her. Executive decision." "And then what? She sues for wrongful termination, and we spend 2 years in court while she tells everyone we're vindictive and unprofessional. So we're stuck." Alma stood and walked to the window, Austin sparkled below them, all lights and possibility. She pressed her forehead against the glass, feeling the cool surface against her skin. "No," she said. "We're not stuck. We just need proof." "Proof of what?" "That she's actively sabotaging the business, not just being difficult, actually causing harm." Alma turned to face him. "The consulting firm. The one that filed the health complaint against my taqueria. I want to know who hired them." Gabe opened his laptop. "I'll call our lawyer in the morning." "Call them now." He looked at her. "Alma, it's midnight. And Camila's probably still awake figuring out how to destroy us tomorrow. Call them." He made the call. By 2 a.m, they had their answer. The consulting firm had been hired by a company called GLS Supply Solutions, one of the chain's largest food distributors. The same distributor Camilla had worked with for 7 years. The same distributor that stood to lose millions if the chain switched to small local suppliers. "Got her," Alma whispered. But Gabe's expression was dark. "This is bigger than I thought. If GLS is involved, they'll fight back hard. They have lawyers, money, connections." "So do we," Alma said. "Alma." "No." She stood in front of him. "We're not backing down. We came too far. We exposed too much. If we quit now, everything we've done means nothing." He met her eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Gabe nodded. "Okay," he said, "but we do this smart. We gather everything. Emails, contracts, timelines. We build a case so airtight they can't wriggle free." They worked until dawn, building a dossier. By the time the sun rose, they had a 40-page document that laid out the conspiracy in excruciating detail. It wasn't just about the health complaint. It was about delayed shipments, leaked internal memos, manipulated bids. Camilla had been orchestrating a campaign to ensure the pilot program failed, protecting her relationship with GLS and securing her own position. At 6 a.m, Gabe's phone rang. It was his head of legal. "We have a problem," the lawyer said. "Camilla just submitted her resignation, effective immediately. Non-disparagement clause. She's gone." Gabe put the phone on speaker. "She can't just resign." "She can, and she did. She's probably halfway to Houston by now." Alma felt the rage build in her chest. "She's running before we can fire her, protecting her reputation." "Exactly," the lawyer said. "And with the non-disparagement clause, we can't publicly discuss why she left. If we do, she can sue." Gabe looked at Alma. "What do you want to do?" Alma thought about her mother, who'd spent her life being told she wasn't good enough, wasn't educated enough, wasn't important enough. She thought about all the people like her mother, working in kitchens, cleaning rooms, keeping everything running, while people like Camilla took credit. "We let her go," Alma said, "but we don't let her win." The Austin Food Plus Wine Festival was 3 weeks away. It was the industry's biggest event in the region, a place where chefs, journalists, and food industry executives converged to see and be seen. Alma had never attended. The entry fee alone was more than she made in a week, but now, as a consultant for the Arriaga chain, she had access. More importantly, she had a plan. She spent 2 weeks preparing. She tested recipes from her mother's notebook, adapting them to demonstrate the kind of cooking she wanted to implement across the chain. She reached out to the farmers she'd been working with, securing commitments for fresh ingredients. She designed a presentation that would show not just food, but the story behind it, the people who grew it, the traditions it honored, the economic viability of doing things right. Gabe helped however he could. He secured a premium booth at the festival. He arranged for journalists to attend her presentation. He hired a photographer to document everything. But mostly he just believed in her. And that, Alma realized, was the most valuable thing he could offer. 3 days before the festival, Alma received a call from an unknown number. "Is this Alma Rojas?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Diana Reyes. I used to work in purchasing for the Arriaga chain. I heard about what you're doing, the pilot program, the local suppliers. I wanted to tell you something." Alma's hand tightened on the phone. "I'm listening. Camila Navarro tried to bribe me 2 months ago. She wanted me to delay shipments from your suppliers, make it look like they were unreliable. When I refused, she had me fired. I signed an NDA, but I don't care anymore. What she did was wrong. Are you willing to testify to that? There was a pause. If it means stopping her from doing this to someone else, yes. Alma wrote down Diana's contact information and immediately called Gabe. He listened without interrupting. This changes everything, he said when she finished. With her testimony, we can void the NDA. We can show she acted in bad faith. But that's not enough, Alma said. We still need to prove the connection to GLS Supply. We have the consulting firm records. Circumstantial. We need someone from inside GLS to admit they coordinated with Camilla. Gabe was quiet. Then, I might know someone, a guy who left GLS last year. He owes me a favor. Call him. The conversation lasted 30 minutes. When Gabe hung up, his expression was grim. He'll talk, Gabe said, but only off the record. He's scared of legal retaliation. That's not good enough, Alma said. We need it on record. He won't budge. Alma paced the length of the room. Then we use what we have. Diana's testimony, the consulting firm records, the timeline. We make it so obvious that people can connect the dots themselves. That's risky. Everything about this is risky. She stopped pacing and looked at him. But we're not doing this just to save the pilot program anymore. We're doing it to make sure this doesn't happen to the next person who tries to change things. He nodded slowly. Okay, but we need to be smart about timing. If we go public too soon, they'll have time to prepare a counterattack. So we wait until the festival, Alma said. We show the food first, let people taste what we're trying to build. Then we show them why it almost didn't happen. The plan solidified over the next 3 days. Alma would present her food at the festival. After the presentation, she'd distribute a dossier to selected journalists, people known for investigative work, for taking on powerful interests. The dossier would lay out the conspiracy without naming names explicitly, letting the evidence speak for itself. The night before the festival, Alma couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Everything she'd worked for came down to tomorrow. If she succeeded, she'd prove that small-scale, ethical cooking could work in a commercial setting. If she failed, she'd be remembered as the woman who couldn't deliver, who couldn't scale, who couldn't handle the pressure. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gabe. You're going to be amazing tomorrow. Get some sleep. She smiled despite her nerves. You too. I haven't slept in 3 days. Why start now? Because tomorrow matters. That's why I can't sleep. She stared at the message, then typed, Thank you for believing in me. His response came quickly. I didn't just believe in you. I bet everything on you. Don't make me regret it. She laughed. I'll try not to. At 3 a.m, she finally drifted off, her mother's notebook clutched against her chest. The Austin Convention Center buzzed with energy, chefs in white coats, journalists with cameras, industry executives in designer suits. Alma stood at her booth, her hands steady despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. The ingredients were laid out before her. Heirloom tomatoes from a farm outside Fredericksburg, childs from a supplier in New Braunfels, masa from a mill that had been operating for 3 generations. Gabe stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. He'd promised to let her handle this alone, but his presence was steadying. She caught his eye and he nodded once, a gesture that said everything. The demonstration began at noon. Alma started by introducing the suppliers, telling their stories. She talked about the economics of small-scale farming, the difference between food grown for flavor versus food grown for shelf life. Then she cooked. The mole came together slowly. She toasted seeds in a pan, their aroma filling the space. She ground chilies by hand, showing the texture that machine grinding could never replicate. She melted chocolate, real chocolate, not the industrial substitute most restaurants used, and explained why it mattered. The crowd grew as she worked. People stopped mid-conversation to watch. Cameras appeared. When the dish was complete, she offered samples. The line stretched 30 people deep. One by one, they tasted it. One by one, their expressions changed. Surprise, then pleasure, then something deeper. Recognition. The taste of food made with intention. A food journalist from Texas Monthly approached her afterward. "That was extraordinary," he said. "Can I ask you some questions?" "Of course." He recorded her answers on his phone. She talked about the pilot program, about the challenges of scaling ethical cooking, about the resistance she'd faced. She didn't mention Camilla by name, but she didn't need to. The journalist was sharp. He heard what she wasn't saying. "Someone tried to stop this," he said. "Didn't they?" Alma met his eyes. "Someone tried. They failed." "Can you elaborate?" She handed him a folder. "This is everything you need to know. Names, dates, documents. I'm trusting you to tell the story fairly." He opened the folder and skimmed the first page. His eyebrows rose. "This is serious." "I know." "You're aware this could create major problems for you?" "I'm aware." He closed the folder and tucked it under his arm. "I'll look into it. If it checks out, we'll publish." "It'll check out." By 5 p.m, Alma was exhausted, but exhilarated. The booth had been mobbed all day. Other chefs had stopped by to ask questions, to share their own frustrations with the industry, to offer solidarity. She'd handed out 7 copies of the dossier to different journalists and bloggers. The story would break. She just had to wait. Gabe appeared at her side as she packed up. "You were incredible." "We'll see," she said. "The hard part comes next." "The hard part is over," he said. "You showed them what's possible. The rest is just clean up." But that night, as she lay in her hotel room, Alma couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. The article dropped 3 days later. Texas Monthly's website published it at 6 a.m, and by noon, it had been picked up by national outlets. The headline read, "How Corporate Greed Nearly Killed a Dream, and Why One Chef Refused to Stay Quiet." The article laid out everything: Camilla's relationship with GLS Supply, the manufactured health complaint against Alma's taqueria, the delayed shipments, the forced resignations. It named names. It included testimony from Diana Reyes and 2 other former employees who'd come forward after reading the initial reports. It showed emails, contracts, timelines. It was thorough. It was damning. And it was everywhere. Alma's phone exploded with messages, reporters requesting interviews, supporters offering congratulations, a few angry messages from people connected to GLS or Camila. She ignored most of them and focused on the work. The taqueria had reopened. The pilot program was running smoothly. She had menus to plan and staff to train. Gabe called her at noon. "Have you seen it?" "I've seen it." "Legal says Camila might sue for defamation." "Let her," Alma said. "Everything in that article is true." "I know, but a lawsuit would be expensive, messy." "So we deal with it." She paused. "Gabe, we knew this would get ugly. We chose it anyway." "I know." He sighed. "I just want to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine." She sat down on the curb outside the taqueria, the phone pressed against her ear. The afternoon sun was harsh and hot. "I'm tired," she admitted. "I'm tired of fighting, but I'm also relieved, because now everyone knows what happened. We're not hiding anymore." "No," Gabe agreed. "We're not." That evening, the Arriaga Hotel's board of directors held an emergency meeting. Gabe attended via video conference, Alma sitting beside him in his office. The board members' faces filled the screen. 12 people in different cities, all looking grim. The chairman, an older man named Howard Chen, spoke first. "Gabe, we need to discuss the media situation." "I'm aware of the media situation," Gabe said. "This is a disaster for the brand. Allegations of corruption, sabotage, unethical business practices, all tied to a company we've worked with for years. We need to do damage control immediately." "The damage was done by Camila and GLS," Gabe said. "We're just exposing it. That's not how the public sees it," another board member said. "They see a company in chaos, leadership fighting, scandal." "Then they see the truth," Alma said. The board members turned their attention to her. Howard's expression was carefully neutral. Ms. Rojas, with all due respect, this situation has spiraled beyond your original mandate. The board appreciates your work on the pilot program, but we need to consider whether continuing down this path serves the company's best interests. Are you asking me to resign? Alma asked. We're suggesting that a cooling off period might be appropriate. Let the legal matters resolve, then reassess. Gabe leaned forward. That's not happening. Alma stays. The pilot program continues, and we're expanding it to 6 more properties by the end of the quarter. The board members exchanged glances. Howard spoke carefully. Gabe, as CEO, you have significant authority, but the board can still overrule you if we believe you're acting against the company's interests. Then vote, Gabe said. Right now, fire me or support me, but we're not doing this in half measures anymore. The silence stretched. Then, one by one, the board members spoke. 2 voted to remove Gabe. 10 voted to support him. Motion fails, Howard said. Gabe, you have the board's support, but we're going to be watching closely. One more scandal, and we won't be so forgiving. The call ended. Gabe closed his laptop and looked at Alma. We just survived, he said. Barely, she replied. He smiled. But we survived. The following weeks were a blur of interviews, meetings, and 18-hour workdays. The scandal had put the Arriaga hotels in the spotlight, but surprisingly, it had also generated interest. Guests who cared about ethical food started booking rooms specifically at the pilot properties. Food journalists wrote follow-up pieces praising the changes. The pilot program's numbers went up, but the cost was personal. Alma barely saw her grandmother. Her taqueria ran with minimal oversight. She lived on 4 hours of sleep and vending machine food. Gabe wasn't much better, drawn and exhausted, running the company while simultaneously rebuilding its reputation. They saw each other mainly in conference rooms and late-night strategy sessions. The fake engagement had become something neither of them discussed, but both felt hanging between them like unfinished business. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of legal depositions, Gabe drove Alma back to her apartment. They sat in the car outside her building, neither moving to get out. I need to tell you something, Gabe said. Alma turned to look at him. When this started, he said, when I first came to your taqueria, I told myself it was just business, a way to fix the brand, but it hasn't been just business for a long time. She didn't respond. He continued. I know we're pretending. I know this engagement isn't real, but He stopped, searching for words. I don't want it to be fake anymore. Alma felt her heart hammering. Gabe, you don't have to answer now, he said quickly. I just needed you to know, because I can't keep pretending I don't feel something real when I look at you. She stared at him. 100 responses ran through her mind, but what came out was simple. I feel it too. His expression shifted, surprise, then hope, then something that looked like relief. Yeah? Yeah. She smiled despite the exhaustion. But I'm not ready yet. This is too big, too fast. We're still in the middle of everything. I know, he said. I'm not asking for anything to change right now. I just needed you to know. She reached across the console and took his hand. Thank you for telling me. They sat there for a long moment, hands clasped, the city quiet around them. We should probably end the fake engagement soon, Alma said eventually. It served its purpose. Probably, Gabe agreed, but neither of them let go. The next morning, Alma opened the taqueria to find a line already forming. Mrs. Chen was first, as always. You look different, Mrs. Chen said. Different how? Happy? Alma smiled. Maybe I am. The weeks continued. The pilot program expanded. 6 new properties came online with local suppliers and seasonal menus. Guest satisfaction scores rose 20%. Revenue increased. The food media wrote glowing reviews. Slowly, painfully, the Arriaga hotels began to rebuild their reputation, not as a luxury chain that happened to serve food, but as a place that cared about what they put on plates. Camilla's lawsuit never materialized. According to Gabe's lawyers, she'd been advised that discovery would expose too much. GLS Supply Solutions quietly ended their contract with the chain and settled all outstanding matters. The consultants who'd filed the fake health complaint against Alma's taqueria lost their license. Justice, Alma learned, was messy and incomplete, but it was still justice. One evening, Gabe called her. "Can you meet me at the San Antonio property? There's something I want to show you." She drove over, curious. He met her at the restaurant entrance, his expression unreadable. "Come with me," he said. He led her through the kitchen to a small private dining room she'd never noticed before. Inside, a table was set for two. Candles flickered. The smell of fresh tortillas filled the air. "What is this?" she asked. "I wanted to cook for you," Gabe said. "Actually cook, not just order takeout or grab lunch between meetings. I wanted to make something for you." She sat down, stunned. "You cooked? Don't get too excited. I followed your mother's recipe book. If this tastes terrible, blame her notes." He brought out plates, simple tacos, rice, beans, nothing fancy. But when she tasted it, she recognized the care that had gone into every element. The beans were perfectly seasoned. The rice had the right texture. The tortillas were warm and tender. "It's good," she said. "Really? Really?" He sat across from her, visibly relieved. "I wanted to show you that I understand now. What you've been trying to teach me, it's not about the money or the suppliers or the systems. It's about caring, about putting yourself into what you make." She set down her fork. "Gabe, I'm not asking for an answer," he said quickly. "I'm just showing you that I'm trying, that I want to be someone worthy of you." She stood and walked around the table. He stood too, uncertain. She took his face in her hands and kissed him. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. "Does this mean—" "It means I'm ready," she said, "to stop pretending, to make this real." "Even though I'm a terrible cook?" "Especially because you're a terrible cook. It means you need me." He laughed and kissed her again. The wedding took place 6 months later in the courtyard of the San Antonio property, the first hotel Gabe's father had opened, now transformed by Alma's vision. String lights hung overhead. Tables were set with simple white linens and mason jars filled with wildflowers from local farms. The menu featured dishes from Alma's mother's notebook, prepared by a team of chefs Alma had trained personally. Donna Julia sat in the front row, crying happy tears. The women from Alma's taqueria worked the event, not as hired help, but as honored guests who'd volunteered to serve. Gabe's mother hugged Alma before the ceremony and whispered, "Thank you for making my son human again." The vows were simple. Gabe promised to keep learning, to keep trying, to never stop seeing Alma for who she really was. Alma promised to be patient, to challenge him when needed, to build something together that honored both their pasts. When the officiant pronounced them married, the applause was deafening. At the reception, Alma stood with Gabe watching their guests, farmers and chefs and hotel staff and board members, all eating together, all celebrating. The food was excellent. The atmosphere was warm. Everything felt right. "We did it," Gabe said. "We did," Alma agreed. "What's next?" She thought about the expansion plans, 12 more properties converting to the new model, a scholarship program for culinary students from low-income backgrounds, a nonprofit to help small farmers access commercial markets. There was so much work ahead, but right now, in this moment, she just wanted to be here. "Next we dance," she said. He took her hand and led her to the dance floor. As they swayed to music played by a mariachi band she'd grown up hearing at neighborhood parties, Alma thought about her mother, about the notebook that had guided her through the hardest year of her life, about the promise she'd made. She'd kept it. She'd built something that mattered. She'd fought for dignity and won. And now, dancing with her husband under stars she could barely see through the string lights, Alma Rojas, once just a young cook from the South Side, felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. The taqueria stayed open. The pilot program became the company standard. The Austin Food Plus Wine Festival invited Alma back the following year as a keynote speaker. The Texas Monthly article won awards and sparked a broader conversation about ethics in the food industry. Camila Navarro took a job in Los Angeles. They never spoke again. GLS Supply Solutions lost 40% of its clients within 18 months and restructured under new management. Diana Reyes started her own consulting firm helping small suppliers navigate corporate contracts. And Alma's mother's notebook, grease-stained and worn, stayed on the shelf in the kitchen of the San Antonio Properties restaurant, a reminder that the best recipes are the ones passed down with love. On their first anniversary, Gabe asked Alma what she wanted. "I have everything I need," she said. "There must be something." She thought for a moment. "More time, more dinners together, more nights that aren't about work." "That I can do," he said, and he did. The expansion continued, the hotels thrived, but they also learned to pace themselves, to remember that building something meaningful takes time, that sustainability isn't just about ingredients, but about people. Years later, when journalists asked Alma how she went from running a small taqueria to transforming a hotel chain, she always gave the same answer. "I didn't change who I was. I just refused to compromise it." And when they asked Gabe what he'd learned from the experience, he'd smile and say that the best things in life can't be standardized. They can only be made with care. Together, they'd built an empire that their mothers would have been proud of, not because of the money or the success, but because they'd never forgotten where they came from or what they stood for. And in the end, that was the only measure that mattered.